Hi, I'm Shauna Lampi-Legaree, and welcome to this week's video. I am on Yellowknife Bay on Great Slave Lake with all these amazing houseboats behind. People live on these houseboats year-round, soft water and hard water. This week's video is about painting the magical light of this time of the year. The sun is low on the horizon. Solstice just happened 2 days ago. The sun rose at 10:07 a.m. and went down at 3:04 p.m. It was our longest night. We got an extra 2 minutes of light since then. Woohoo, we're on our way. This video, I am painting ptarmigan with that magical light. You can see I've even got the big mittens out here. The video comes in 3 parts. The first part is color mixing, second part is the painting, and the third part is the critique that I normally do after I finish a color study. Stay to the end where I'm going to need your help to figure out which version of the ptarmigans I should continue on to paint. Grab your paint tools and let's get going. So I'm beginning with a very quick section here of a color study that I started and I actually abandoned after an hour. What I learned in there was the colors that I had chosen were not quite correct. Their values were too dark and they were still too chromatic. So when I got up in the morning, I thought, okay, I know what I need to do. What I learned is that my values were too dark in my lights, that I needed my light to be value 9.5, my middle light to be value 9, my dark light to be value 8.5, and my half tone that would go just before the terminator line where the light no longer gets to it on the shadow side needed to be a value 8. I just completed the 4 very close together values for the light part of the bird and the snow in Cadmium Yellow Medium, and now I'm on to Cadmium Orange, and I'm making it up to a value 9.5, which is pretty close to just being white. Then I add a neutralized gray so that the chroma is lowered down and more realistic. And even though I thought I had brought the chroma down a lot, I discovered while I was painting that not quite enough. I am testing this off-site. You can't see that I'm testing it, but I am testing to make sure that I'm getting close to the value that I need. The next one I'm going to do is Cadmium Red Medium. I chose to use warm colors for the white area mostly. So this Cadmium Red Medium, I am doing the same thing. I'm mixing up to the value 9 there and I realized it wasn't quite chromatic enough. So I add a little bit more. Anyway, now I'm into value 8.5 and I add the neutralized gray to get it to where I need it to be so that it's not too colorful. This is the only color I chose that isn't a warm color. It's a cool color and it's Quinacridone Magenta. And I'm doing the same 4 values of the 9.5, the value 9, the value 8.5, lowering the chroma each time with a neutral gray that's the same value. And then I started with the blues. The blues I know are going to be darker, so I'm going to start at a value 8. I continue to lower the chroma with the same value in the neutralized gray, so it's also a value 8. And now it's value 7. I'm working on value 6. And each one of them I have a neutralized gray pile of paint to mix from. And a value 5. A white object is not going to have a huge range of value change. When we take pictures, often our shadows and our cast shadows are far darker than actually we would see in person. So I try to lighten them up and remember that. Now, I wasn't sure if I would use this phthalo blue-green mixtures. I put it on there because you never know when you're working, and it's just easier to have options in front of you to put up and see what you think of it. And again, it's the same values. It's value 8, 7, 6, and now value 5. And all of them with that neutralized gray. The link for my video about how to neutralize your gray is down below. This time when I went to do the color study, I thought I really need to tone my board before I get going. And I'm using this little brush and then thinking, oh, I have a bigger brush. It made my life so much easier. So I just did an underpainting of burnt umber, nice and thin. I didn't really want it to be too dark. And here we go. I've got the drawing on, and we're going to work on the back ptarmigan. Now, I have not put white any place on here, though I have used very light colors that have been mixed with white, but I'm trying to avoid white just by itself. I did a video where I painted a white sphere, and I really think it relates to painting this white bird. If you haven't seen that video, or you just want a refresher, that link is below. What we learned in the sphere is that when a white object is turning away from the light, it's a very subtle shift of value until you hit that terminus line. I was trying to remember that when I was working on this, thinking about the fact that the ptarmigan is a round object and that its planes are moving away from the light until that terminus line. And right now I'm working in that terminus line. I keep coming back and adding more value, and I keep softening the edges of my paint. So I'm using a little bit of paint and soften it with a clean brush. And get the tail in there. Then get the reflected light that's bouncing back off of the snow back onto the bird. On the first color study, I made the shadow side of the back bird the same value as the shadow side of the front bird. I just really felt that that confused the issue as to the back bird being further away than the front bird. Now here we go with putting in the eyes and the beak. And now we can start to clean up those little bits of edges. I often have two brushes in my hand, one that's a stiff brush that I am using with paint. I have an ivory flat brush in my hand that I was working with as a very small one, because this is not a very big painting. It's 28 by 20 centimeters, which in imperial terms is about 8 by 10 inches. But you can see I'm creating form. Now I'm heading into doing the snow in the background. I did not spend a lot of time on the snow on the background. There's a lot more details if I was to do this as a painting. And here I'm going to start working on the front ptarmigan, who is flying. The wings will be very interesting to work with. I'm just getting the head on, and we've got a little bit of lost edges happening simply because one ptarmigan is in front of another, but we might have still had those lost edges simply because the snow is white, the birds are white, and that's going to give us a lot of opportunity to have lost edges because all the colors are very similar. I worked in a very different way this time. I have gray-scaled the image, and I've got it color printed because you still want all the nuances, and if you do it printed black and white, you just lose a lot of information. I'm trying not to be beholden to the colors that are there simply by working with value. So I'm squinting my eyes, I'm looking to see if the value is doing what I want it to do, and if not, then I darken it or I lighten it. I just put a tiny bit of paint on and I move it around. here we go, working on the back, and that plane is towards the light, but as it's turning away, I use the Cadmium Orange, neutralized even more, to do that. I'm working on the ptarmigan that's further away, and I'm working on the back to finalize it around the edges. When I work in color studies, it gives me a lot of information. Just a reminder to stay to the end of the video, because I will be doing a critique where I'm looking at what I've done, what I like, what I think needs more work. I'm going to show you physical options that we can consider and work through and think about how we can change this painting up a little bit and make it better. I'm working on the front feathers. I'm not worried about getting these perfect because this is a color study and it's supposed to give me information, not be something that takes forever. This one did take a couple of hours because it is more complex. Once you add all those feather shapes in, it starts to be quite complex. I wanted to do this exploration around colorful whites for quite a while. It's really nice to have a reason to explore, and the bonus is I get to share it with you. As an artist, trying new things and exploring new ways of working is part of the goal of the work that I do. Who knows, it might lead someplace kind of different and unique. I've put in the darkest darks and the lightest lights, you can see that, and now I'm sort of building on that information. The underneath of a ptarmigan has a soft yellow tone to it. It could be because it's on the ground and that's the part that gets dirty. I have no idea why, but that's what I have noticed. I was honoring that, and also the light coming back off the snow would brighten it. And now I came in with a different camera. I was trying something new and it changed the colors on the camera, not when I was working. Didn't change anything. The top of the front wing is capturing a lot of light. It is really faced towards the sunshine. I'm just getting the shape of it, not all the individual feathers. When I paint this larger, or if I paint this larger, I would do all the individual feathers because there was all sorts of modulation happening. Now I'm doing the back wing, which is very much darker and seems kind of pushed away. Let's work on the snow a bit here. We get all kinds of interesting lost edges on this piece because it's white snow against white birds. And I'm using a brush just to clean up the edges and take control of the paint. And I'm kind of thinking about the snow the same way, except I'm not putting the level of detail in it. And I'm looking at it and squinting my eyes to see if it's close to the value that I'm seeing, even though it's a different color than what I'm seeing. Where's the light? Where's the medium? Where's the dark? An interesting thing is happening. The birds really stood out when they were there by themselves, but once you get the snow in there, it's quite fascinating how many lost edges there are. places where there is some contrast and then other places that there's not. Changing back the camera, and the lighting shifted kind of weirdly, which of course I didn't notice until I had finished painting. So let's put in the feet. They've got very furry feet. They have definitely evolved for this really cold northern place that they're in. Put in a little bit of highlight there to sort of differentiate the belly. And I'm going to work to build up the value on the wings as their feathers are turning and hitting the light. What I love about ptarmigans is they show up only in the winter here. They have a 7-year cycle where they go up and there's lots of them, and then they go down. And then there's sort of a more longer term cycle. A couple of years ago, they seemed to hit a 30-year low on top of their 7-year low, and there weren't very many around. So it's nice to see that they're back a little bit more. We certainly enjoy them around our city. Adding a little bit light and then smooshing the paint around and softening it. This helps it to still be catching the light, but not near as much as the feathers that are faced towards us and facing towards the light. Putting the last little bits of information on here and finishing up the snow. Just at the final point here. I thought I would share with you the pictures that I started with. You can see the very first one here is the ptarmigan off the side. It had flown away, and here I've cropped it in. But you notice something. Do you notice something? There's no other bird there. I went looking into my other photos and I found a bird with similar enough lighting that I thought, okay, let's take away the background and see if we can plunk that in. And I chose to put it just as the bird is flying past it. I could have put it behind, I could have put it in other places. This is where I chose to do it. This is the image I was working from. I have never worked with just a grayscaled image before, so this was an interesting challenge. Let's look at the final painting. I have 3 questions that I ask myself every time I get prepared to do a critique on one of my color studies. As I'm going to go into the next level of painting and spend a lot of time creating the next piece of work, I want to make sure that I create the strongest image that I can. And the 3 questions I have are, what works? What doesn't work? And how can I fix it? Before I get going on this critique, why don't you stop the video for a minute and leave me a comment and tell me what you think worked, what you think didn't work, and what do you think I could do to make this painting a stronger painting? I focus on question number 1, what works? As it's easy to notice the negative and not see the positive, then lose the positive when you get to working on the larger piece. Why change it when it's not broken? Keeping focused on what is working so that you can keep it in your painting is really important. Then what doesn't work? What needs strengthening? What needs diminishing? What needs to be built up more? And how can I fix it? And I'll really sit with the painting for quite a while writing about it. I write down any idea that comes and then refine from there. Let's critique this piece. I like the intersection of the two birds. I placed the one in the back, and I still like where I placed it. I'm really pleased with the subtle shifts of lights on the parts of the birds, especially in the whites where I was using those very gentle colors with the slight value changes. I think the birds could fill in the picture plane more and maybe just make it about the birds. I have to play with that idea. Maybe lightening the snow in the background or darkening it. What would that look like? And then I thought, what I need to do is paint the background completely, then draw the birds on top and paint them on top. I don't know, it might work. So here is a lightening one. I lightened it by 45%. And then I darkened it by 25%, the backgrounds. Kind of interesting how it pushes the birds forward, but doesn't seem to fit. I brought it closer. I really like that so that it can fill the frame. Could do a 16 by 20. I could do a much larger painting. That would be fun. Though there is an idea out there that you shouldn't paint the bird any larger than the bird actually is. I don't prescribe to that theory. And here was the last one I did. I just kind of blurred the background. And actually it makes it look like the snow is newly fallen. I found that kind of interesting. These are all things to consider. So what do you think? Leave a comment below and let me know. Take a moment to like my video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell notification so that you don't miss my next video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.